Welcome to the CMN Church Planting Podcast. My name is Aaron Burke. I am your host. We are here to help church planters, church leaders, church multipliers be all that God has called them to be. Every single month, we are producing new value-added content for you. And today, I have got one of the church growth legends. Mike Santiago is here, not just a church leader that is helping thousands of churches get better and grow, but is also a great friend of mine. Mike, you planted a church.
Totally.
Show us the behind the scenes. Tell us, because people see the Mike Santiago now, multiple locations, reaching thousands of people, but it did not start that way.
Very few people understand the time horizon on how long we've been grinding it out as church planters. We moved to Raleigh, North Carolina with no promises of anything when we were 24 years old. We had 3 kids in diapers, and I got a job at Panera Bread, and then started inviting people that were praying over their broccoli cheddar soup. I thought they looked Christian, so I'm like, hey, come to my house for a Bible study, which is weird. And we started in our home, and much like a lot of church planters who might be watching this, we've just been grinding it out for the last 11 years. And we've seen the faithfulness of God. We've learned from a lot of great individuals like yourself, and we're glad to be a part of CMN. Without CMN's help, it wouldn't have been possible. And so now we're one church in multiple locations, but it didn't start that way. It started in our living room. It started with a few people with a dream and believing God for great things.
Okay, so I want to look at Mike, and I want you to think of who you are and what made the difference between you and some of those guys that have tried it and just failed. And you have something about your grit, the way you approach this. I mean, you were how old when you planted?
We were 20. I had just turned 24, so 23 when we moved there.
All right, so that's really young.
Yeah.
I mean, you didn't have any of this handed to you. What was it that separated you in the church planting process?
I've been thinking about this a lot lately. Small-minded pastors, when they get together, they talk about other people. Regular growth pastors or maintenance mode pastors, when they get together, they talk about the good old times. But growth-minded leaders, when they get together, they talk about the future. And I've always been future-focused. So I'm not really interested in talking about others. I'm not really interested in talking about the past. I'm really interested in talking about the future. And if you've ever been around me, it's like I'm always thinking about the next thing. I've caught myself preaching a sermon, thinking about how am I going to add some of the content to next week's sermon in the middle of my Sunday message. So the way that I'm wired as a church planter is to never really compare myself to others, never really marry the past, but to always emphasize the future. And that, I think, has really helped us overcome getting kicked out of venues, overcome being evicted, overcome people leaving, as many of us have encountered. When you know that God has a vision and a purpose for your church plant, when you know that there's dreams and desires that are in your future, it's easy to not settle for the present or even get married to the past.
Okay, so let's talk about some of the obstacles y'all faced, because I've been with you since almost the beginning. And I mean, you lost your venue.
With only 2 weeks notice.
Tell people what happens.
Yeah.
In that world where you think people don't understand, everything's on the line.
Yes. There's a lot of liability at stake here.
Right.
So we're meeting, this would have been our 4th venue. So we had already moved 4 times. We're in a high school. We had invested into the high school. We had committed to giving them the sound system, installing the screens, trying to make life easier on us and investing in them. And the lady at the school board, the county, went on our website and she saw that we were having live chickens or little chickens for Easter, a petting zoo in the parking lot, and went and found a little clause in our contract that says no live animals on the property. So here we have bunnies and chicks. Now, I'm not talking about a horse ride.
Right.
I'm not talking about ponies. I'm talking about little handheld animals. And she had it highlighted. She called the principal. They had a meeting with me. They blindsided me and they said, you violated your contract. And your contract is supposed to renew in 2 weeks, and we're not going to renew it. So we were kicked out. We're running about 350, 400 at the time. So we weren't even in startup mode. We were kind of semi-established. And I remember I was so scared to tell our church that we had been kicked out or canceled that I said, hey, next Sunday, which was our Sunday where we could no longer meet in there, we're going to be meeting in the park across the street for Family Fun Day. So I basically told the church it's Family Fun Day because we literally had no place to go with 2 weeks notice. And in all of that time, you act like the leader that you want to be in front of people, but in the back of my mind and in my heart, I'm like, this is it. Our church is done. This is the time, the make it or break it moment where our church can't survive anymore. And, thanks to God and the grace of God, we were able to merge with an existing church in that time.
Yeah, we get there, but let's talk about the discouraging moments.
I mean,
how did you get through
for
it?
7 weeks, we did not know where we were going to meet week to week.
Yes. So you met in random places.
I mean, we got a little country club and we got kicked out after 2 weeks.
I remember that.
We got Potter's Hand Bible Church on Saturday nights, kicked out after 3 weeks. I mean, literally, we were in a venue for 2 years and then we were in 6 different venues in like 7 weeks, 8 weeks.
And it is remarkable that you guys survived, first of all, and then now have thrived. But how did you personally deal with the discouragement, the uncertainty? This is your not just your church, it's also your livelihood. It's you've got kids at home, you've got a wife that's going, what's happening? How did you deal with that?
There's a button on your like Spotify or Apple Music, and you can repeat a song. So you can repeat the album or you can press it twice and it goes to repeat one. I had one song on repeat one during that whole season of my life. And I can take you to the streets where we drove around, one of my elders and I put one song on repeat one, and we literally drove around the city listening to the same song about the faithfulness of God over and over again, looking for a place to meet. Like we were looking for one place. Dance, ballerina studio, flat floor, we could put in there. That's where we got the clubhouse. So in those times, I think you need an anchor and an anthem, and a song needs to be an anthem. There needs to be an anthem in your soul where you're like, I don't know what's going to get me through it, but I know that I can worship my way through this thing. So we had to repeat one song. That's really important. The next thing is having a long time horizon of your ministry. If you look at how long we suffered for, it's like this much in comparison to how long our church will be in existence.
Great.
So a lot of church planters, especially in the early days, the hours feel like days and the days feel like weeks and the weeks feel like months.
Right.
It's kind of like during 2020, the global crisis, everything kind of slowed down and how long are we going to go? But in the time horizon of your church's lifespan, the suffering is really just a blip. And so when you have the ability to zoom out and look beyond, the momentary suffering, you can really get better perspective. So now when someone comes to me and says, man, I'm having a really bad day, like, thank God it's just a day. And it could have been a decade. Thank God it's just an hour. It could have been a week. And so I think in those times of the challenging times, I've learned to stretch my time horizon. I'm 36 years old. I want to do this till I'm 56 years old.
Right.
So our church, let's say I give a good 30 years to my church, I'm only a third of the way there. I actually have more in front of me than I do behind me.
That's a great way to put it.
And I'm really grateful for that.
I think there's something about that perspective. We have all of our pastors read a book called God of the Long View.
Shout out to David Wigington, my friend who wrote that book.
That is a remarkable book because he basically tells us you're doing a long play.
Yeah.
A lot of what you're investing in, you're not going to see it right now.
He's got an incredible church in Indianapolis or Indiana, and it's really, really cool.
I think there's something about that, though, to look at it, because most of the failures we've seen in church plants or the closures are in those first few months or first few years where they go, okay, we missed a Sunday, close the doors. I'm like, no, you got to keep going.
I remember that Sunday for us. One of the Sundays where I thought it was over.
Yeah.
The offering was $11 and I had put a $10 bill in. So I was like, we're not going to make it.
No, absolutely.
And you cannot base your ministry off a day.
Right.
Because we serve the God of decades.
Right.
The long view.
I'm going to lean into the fact that there is something about the tribe you are part of also.
Yeah.
Because CMN And me and you've been good friends for a long time, but I remember the phone calls. I remember the hangouts, the times we could laugh together.
Sure.
We cry together.
Yeah.
Like, you need the right people in your life during those times of crisis. When those things seem to be falling apart, it's very different when you call me and you're going, our venue's shut down, we don't have a place. Like, there's a faith component that I'm going to bring into your life versus you being around the wrong crowd, the wrong group that goes, well, Bank of America might be hiring. Go check that out. Like, you need the right people in your life. And if you're looking for that tribe, I just want to plug CMN. I want to plug the fact that we have a tribe, a group of people that are faith-filled, spirit-empowered, missions-focused. We're going to be in your corner. And if you want that, and I'm going to challenge you, lean in. Lean into our conference. We have a conference that happens every March. If you haven't gone through church planning training, you can always go to iwanttoplantachurch.com. We'll talk about church planning in a little bit, but the tribe matters, the friendships matter. Just talk about it for just a little bit, because I know you've got some of your greatest friends through this.
Yeah, I know that there are friends for a reason, friends for a season, and friends for life. There are friends for a reason, there are friends for a season, and friends for life. Some friends you need for a certain reason. They're going to put you in the right place at the right time. Then there are friends for a season. You're friends, and then they move apart, and you guys all have those kind of friends. And then there are friends for life. And one of the things that I've learned is that CMN, and any tribe that you're a part of, but in particularly the Church Multiplication Network, what we build, the relational equity we build, helps you withstand the storms of ministry, the challenges of ministry. So my best friends have come from this tribe. Again, friends for a reason, friends for a season, friends for life. I've had all three of those types of friends that I found within CMN. And it doesn't happen organically, actually. It doesn't happen naturally. You have to lean into healthy friendships. They require work. They require scheduling. They require answering the phone call. They require vulnerability, appropriate vulnerability. They require telling the truth. Yep. So you don't just come to one CMN event and leave with a million best friends, but you do lean into that relational component.
So good. All right, let's talk about church mergers for a second. Yep. You merged so you're out of a venue. The Lord opened up a huge opportunity for you to merge, and just overnight, everything worked out perfect.
It's always perfect.
It is a long, painful, yet beautiful story. Yeah. So give some encouragement, because we're listening to, some multipliers are listening to this. Some church planners are listening to this. What's the approach? How did you walk into that? How did you start those conversations? What's your do's and don'ts of church mergers?
I've got a lot of thoughts about church mergers. When you take a legacy church that is, steeped in the way things that have always been done, and then you take a church plant like ours, skinny jeans, big screens, haze machines, and you kind of collide these two together, there's going to be friction that gets created. And they called it a merger. I called it a murder, because one of us was going to die. Right. And there were some decisions that we had to make in this merger process where we said, all right, we're going to keep this, and we're going to surrender or sacrifice this. I think anytime a planter or a young pastor goes into merging with an existing establishing church, you can expect a loss of culture more than anything else. The one thing that we experienced wasn't, a ton of threats of violence or pushback of any kind like that. The one thing that really grieved our heart was the loss of culture. Man, we used to be able to just do things so much quicker. Now we have to ask for committees, or there used to be just one nursery director. Now there's two nursery directors. And so learning how to navigate change management for mergers is key. Learning how to communicate expectations corporately to the church, behind the scenes in the boardroom and in the elders meetings or in the leadership meetings is so key. Knowing your strengths and your weaknesses and appropriate vulnerability is so important. I think if I was going to do a merger again, I would be as clear as I possibly could from day one. Mm-hmm. So I'm not going to let the building get me to skirt around telling the truth about how I feel about certain things. I'm not going to let the idea of the merger get me to skirt around the truth. I'm going to walk into the room and I'm going to say, we need you, you need us. Here's how I see it working together, and really try to play out as many details as possible.
Okay, so you merged. Give us that timeline of what happened.
Yeah, we got kicked out on like a Sunday in June, because it was right before 4th of July. On that same Sunday, the church we merged with, their pastor resigned. So it happened on the same day. So they spent the last 8 weeks looking for a new pastor. We had spent 8 weeks looking for a new venue. And then we merged. And then I would say it took 2 years to finally sit there on a Sunday morning after the merger and say, I'm proud of the church we are again.
Right.
And just in time for the global crisis of 2020.
Right.
Essentially, we got the church that we had dreamed of, and then we went multi-site from there.
Okay, and why did you go multi-site?
We went multi-site for a couple of reasons. We had a good group of people driving over 35 minutes that weren't able to get connected during the week. So in order for the local church to be local, it's got to be effective. It's got to be local. I learned this from one of my really old mentors. He's a sage. His name is Aaron Burke. So we wanted the church to be local. We also, our burden for the city started to expand. Much like having a child, you think, oh, one child, how could I love any other child anymore? Right. You've learned this firsthand. I've learned this firsthand. Your heart begins to expand for a city. So multi-site came from our hearts expanding for the city in different regions of the city. And so from there, we went from 1 to 2. Now we have 3 in addition to our broadcast, so 4 locations.
It's awesome. All right, you have really stepped in to help pastors break the 200 barrier. First of all, why 200? Why does it matter? I know there's a lot of planters, a lot of senior pastors that are listening to this that go, man, that 200 would be unbelievable. Like, how do they get there?
Yeah. One of my callings on life is to take the mystery out of church growth. So I'm trying to help people break the 200 barrier. We're on a mission to see 2,000 churches break the 200 barrier. And the reason for 200 is it presents to be one of the most challenging barriers to break. And once you get past 200, it presents a ton more of sustainability for the pastor and the congregation. When a church is over 200, their life cycle is much longer. They don't necessarily feel the strain financially, and they can be more effective for the gospel. So why 200? Well, number one, it's challenging, but it's doable. Number two, I think it helps the church be more sustainable in a community.
Okay. So give us, I know you do days of training to give people over 200, and obviously you have a whole website.
Yeah.
People can sign up and go through your program and get resources. Give us some nuts and bolts. How do we get over 200?
The number one way to get over 200 is to have 57 people serving on a Sunday.
57?
57 people serving on a Sunday equates to 200 people in attendance almost every time and in almost every context. It's not science, but it's close.
Okay. And
so you got to come up with 57 jobs. Preacher, drummer, singer, background singer, sound man, nursery 1, nursery 2, kids worker 1, kids worker 2, greeter 1, right. 57. So you get a whiteboard right now after you watch this podcast or listen to this podcast, and you number it 1 through 57. If you create 57 jobs and you fill those 57 jobs, your church will break 200.
Okay, so it's not, I'm looking to hire more staff. It is create volunteer opportunities for people to serve.
When less people are unemployed, the economy gets stronger.
Right.
As a nation, when our unemployment is down, our economy goes up. The same is true for a church. When their unemployment rate, meaning there are people who aren't employed, I'm not talking about jobs per se, but volunteering.
I get it.
The economy is weak. But when everyone is working, the economy is up.
Okay, outside of that, what's another trick?
I think we really do a poor job, I'm generalizing here, at creating an online presence that actually communicates to a first-time guest. A lot of our online present stuff is internal, so it's a lot of announcements. It's got a lot of language that's insider. I think an online reputation for a smaller church is actually more important because people are attending online or they're checking you out online before they ever check you out in person.
I love the fact that you lead a big church like it's a small church.
Yeah.
And I think people can be inspired by the fact that, I mean, we were talking earlier, you're texting every first time
From my
giver.
personal phone number.
I mean, this
First
is,
time guest and first time giver.
and this is, I hear this and I'm going, this is what every church should be doing, but not just every church, but especially every church you're under 200.
Yes.
Why are you delegating that?
Right.
Like, be the point person. Why?
We tend to automate what we think is going to make our church grow. And in the early days, and I would even say to where we are now, automation is actually not the way to growth. Personalization is the way to growth. Wow. So when a kid misses a Sunday, the teacher notices that the kid was missing and they write that kid, little Johnny, a note. Hey, we missed you in the kids class. You're getting that family back. That family might have been gone, but when Johnny gets a card that was handwritten to him for missing the class, that's how you get them back. So I think personalization is better than automation, especially in the early days of a church plant.
Personal is powerful.
Yes.
That's the way we say it too, because people want to be needed and known.
Yeah.
The only people that love big crowds are rock stars and the preacher.
That's right.
The people want to go, I'm not part of a crowd, I'm a person.
Yes. Sometimes efficiency is not effective. So a lot of people are like, how do I make this more efficient? How do I make this more efficient? In the early days, it is not about efficiency, it's about effectiveness. And when you measure impact, you'll find that impact gets measured on personalization, not on standardization or scalability.
Okay. Any other big mistakes that pastors make, leaders make, that keep them from hitting that 200 mark?
The number one thing I see, without a doubt, is they take themselves too seriously. Nobody laughs. Nobody laughs in their church services. Their sermons don't have any humor. When they walk into a room, it's almost like they demand some sort of respect or honor that it's almost fake and plastic. And so I would encourage anyone watching or listening, man, just take a breather. Don't take yourself too seriously. Take what you do very seriously. Like, I take my work very seriously, but I've stopped taking myself very seriously.
Make people laugh.
Make people laugh. You got to have a good time. Like, if you're happy and you know it, tell your face. That's what I always say.
I love that.
Yes.
Okay. You are also on the executive presbytery for the Assemblies of God, which a lot of people have no clue even what that is.
Neither do I.
Yeah. Okay. You're the under 40 representative for that. Mm-hmm. All right. So there's a lot of ministers that are maybe a little frustrated.
Sure.
They might not even go, why am I part of this movement?
Yeah.
So I had Doug Clay on before, and he was so inspiring, so encouraging. But as a young minister, why have you bought into the Assemblies of God? Why are you an advocate for it, and why should they be?
Yeah, I'm third generation Assemblies of God, so I can't leave. My grandfather will kill me. That's part of it. It's kind of like a mafia thing. But no, in all seriousness, there's not really an organization set up to minister to the whole family generationally like the Assemblies of God. They are a global movement of missionaries that enable your children who might get called into the ministry to go through a system and a process to where they can actually see the call of God fulfilled on their life. There are very few organizations that have kids camps, youth camps, fine arts, youth convention, all the way up through college and university systems, all the way up through credentialing systems. There is just a process that the organization provides to a child or to a family to see the call of God fulfilled on their life. Could they do it without the Assemblies of God? Absolutely. But I've never met someone who has been a part of the Assemblies of God and seen God's call fulfilled that regrets some of those defining moments that the AG has provided to my children and myself as I grew up. I also think that there's something to be said about covering. There's something to be said about accountability. There's something to be said about just this sense of family and camaraderie. When you go out on your own or independent or on an island or don't really want to hold credentials or be a part of a tribe, you are isolating yourself. And ministry is already hard. It's already tough with the tribe. Like, in the Assemblies of God, it's already hard. I can't imagine how much more challenging it would be outside of the Assemblies of God.
Okay, Mike, how do people get in touch with you? How do they find out about Break 200?
Yeah.
Give us some information.
The best way is just on Instagram. It's at Mike Santiago, which is my name. And then if you want to join our group of pastors, we have hundreds of pastors that have already joined Break 200. It's just break200.com. And then if you want to plant a church, this is the most important part, just go to iwanttoplantachurch.com. We would love to help you and resource you on your journey to plant. And we're really glad that you listened today.
Hey, this has been the CMN Church Planting Podcast for all you church planters, church leaders, church multipliers. We hope you are getting better and walking into all that God has for you. Make sure you like, subscribe this, share it with somebody so that they can be encouraged too. And we're excited about the future of the church. We will see you on next month's episode.